Students, Mr. Cohen here. Today we're going to be looking at the causes and the effects of the Peloponnesian War. And this was a war between two of the most powerful Greek city-states, Athens and Sparta. And we'll see that this war also leads to the decline of the power of Athens over time. So let's get started. By the way, this is also to reinforce the Edmentum materials, the tutorial on the Peloponnesian War and also on Pericles.
The war between Athens, leader of the Delian League of Allied City-States and Colonies, against Sparta, leader of the Peloponnesian League, pitted a powerful navy against one of the most dominant infantry forces in history. Preceding this conflict, Athens had defeated a Persian invasion force at the Battle of Marathon. A decade later, a much larger Persian invasion force suffered major setbacks and defeats at Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans famously fought to the last man. Then at Salamis, the Persians were dealt a major naval defeat against the Athenian navy.
So we can see in a previous period that Athens and Sparta were united fighting against the Persians, keeping this massive empire, the Persian Empire, at bay. The Persians had taken over huge areas of land to the east, and they were attacking Greece, and Athens and Sparta, Sparta's army and Athens' navy able to push them out of the region. However, this alliance, this working together, does not last forever. And we'll see that they come into contact with each other, especially as Athens starts to become more powerful around the Greek peninsula.
And finally at Plataea, the Persian army was defeated on land, before downsizing and eventually abandoning the campaign. For the next half-century, both states followed an anti-Persian policy and supported any anti-Persian activities in the eastern Mediterranean, allowing for an intermittent peace to exist between Athens and Sparta. In order to fight the Persians at sea, the Athenians formed the Delian League. By exercising more and more control over the members of the league, Athens converted this coalition into an empire.
So in other words, the Delian League is a coming together of allies, friends of Athens in the region. So other city-states and colonies in the area of Greece and to the east would have allied with Athens rather than with Sparta. So this is called a Delian League, this coalition or uniting of allies or friends together with Athens. And they're going to group together and they're going to become powerful, and Sparta is going to become Sparta is going to start feeling vulnerable and a little bit afraid that Athens is becoming too powerful in the region.
Exacting tribute from its members. From the money extracted from her client states, Athens built herself into a city that was the envy of the Hellenistic world.
Hellenistic comes from the word Hellas. Hellas is the Greek word for Greece. So we're talking about the Greek world. This is Athens is becoming the envy of the Greek world. Other Greek city-states are looking upon Athens with envy and awe and admiration, and also some fear as they see its power increase.
A fleet of 300 triple-banked galleys, each of these triremes, was manned by a crew of 170 professional oarsmen. The city-state of Corinth had been the dominant maritime power prior to the Persian Wars, and as Athens' power grew, her navy outnumbered Corinth's fleet 3-1 and began to incite rebellion in her colonies and encroach on its trade routes. In a series of small conflicts lasting 15 years, known as the First Peloponnesian War, Sparta opposed Athens and defeated the Athenian army in one non-decisive engagement, while Athens continued to expand her naval power. One significant development during this period was the rebuilding of Athens' walls on a grand scale, with a long causeway connecting Athens with the port city of Piraeus.
So this is important to have this fortified or strengthened causeway, because Athens is actually slightly inland. If you go to Athens today, you can get a little train that will go all the way to Piraeus. Piraeus is still the main port in this area, and you get boats, ferry boats to the islands. Tourists go from Piraeus today to the islands. These two cities today are no longer so separate. They've spread out and they pretty much join up with each other. But Athens built this causeway, this fortified causeway, to prevent people being attacked, supplying the ships and joining the ships at the port of Piraeus. But notice it's a very narrow causeway, and so this is vulnerable to attack from either side,
allowing Athens to be fully supplied by sea, even if an invading army would destroy the surrounding countryside and farmland. This hostile period ended with the so-called 30 Years' Peace between the two city-states that would last for less than half of its intended duration. Despite this peace, hostility between Athens and Corinth continued, and in 431 BC, Corinth successfully convinced Sparta and the Peloponnesian League to declare war on Athens, with the goal of ending the burgeoning Athenian Empire.
And the Peloponnesian League is named after this peninsula here. Notice it's still joined here by land. This is not an island, it is a peninsula. It's almost surrounded by water, but it's actually connected by land here. Today there is a canal that goes through here called the Corinth Canal. So the Peloponnesian League is named after this peninsula. Also, you can notice, you'll notice here that the whole of Greece is one big peninsula too. Okay, almost surrounded by water, but not fully.
The first phase of the Second Peloponnesian War, commonly referred to as simply the Peloponnesian War, is known as the Archidamian War, where Sparta pursued a policy of pillaging the countryside around Athens in an attempt to provoke a pitched battle. The Athenians had anticipated the Spartan strategy and had organized a continuous flow of grain shipments from Egypt and colonies on the Aegean and Black Sea coasts. The Athenian strategy was to blockade the Peloponnesian Peninsula from any trade and supplies, while opportunistically raiding Sparta's allies. While initially the Athenians seemed to be maintaining the upper hand in this asymmetric war of attrition that had been carefully planned for years by the Athenian statesman Pericles, the population from the surrounding countryside poured in behind the safety of the Athenian walls in the early stages of the war. This had been taken into account beforehand, and wealthy Athens had more than enough food flowing into the crowded city to feed everyone. What had not been taken into account was tainted grain shipments carrying plague, which rapidly spread through the overcrowded city.
So guess what? Guess what many of the people are going to die from rather than from wounds from war, from fighting. Many of these people are going to die of the plague that's been brought into the city. Athens could not have prepared for this plague. Did not know it was going to happen. So even though they've got themselves plenty of supplies, remember these city-states had created colonies elsewhere or established trade links. They're bringing goods they wanted or needed from elsewhere that they weren't able to supply themselves. And Athens had stocked up with food. However, this plague plays a major role in their defeat.
Initially, the city was resilient, inspired by the charismatic rhetoric of Pericles.
So Pericles, this leader, he was a leader famous in Athens history. He'd helped to build a city, helped to organize architects, designing amazing buildings. He'd really built Athens up as a leader, but he also inspired the people to fight as a military commander too.
Estimated 1 in 4 Athenians succumbed to the plague, including Pericles and his sons, before it had run its course. At the height, mercenaries refused to fight for Athens, and even the Spartans ceased to campaign near Athens for fear of catching the plague. Ironically, the masterfully planned Athenian blockade of the Peloponnese had protected Sparta and its allies from receiving any of the plague-tainted grain. The Athenian survivors adopted a much more aggressive strategy, greatly increasing the raids and building fortified outposts along the Peloponnesian coast. The Helots, Spartan slaves that outnumbered them 10 to 1.
So, what do you think these Helots are going to do? Okay, they're outnumbering the Spartan people that own them. What do you think they're going to do during this critical time? Let's find out. What do you think these slaves, the Helots, are going to do? These are people that were taken usually as prisoners of war and forced into slavery by the Spartans. Huge numbers of them. Often the Spartan rulers would actually call upon their people to start wars with their own slaves, simply to use it as an excuse to kill them, to keep them under control, to keep them living in fear.
Were encouraged to run away to these outposts, which put pressure on Sparta to defend the home front. This phase of the war ended with the 50-year Peace of Nicias, which never really went into full effect, with both belligerents raiding each other through proxies from the onset, and eventually directly.
So what they're doing, the Greek city-states of Athens, Corinth and Sparta, they're using their supporters to attack each other. So Athens might call upon members of the Delian League out elsewhere to attack members of the Peloponnesian League. So up here you might have allies of Athens, shown in blue, attacking the allies and friends of Sparta and Corinth, shown in this pinkish colour. So war was going on, not necessarily always between Athens and Sparta directly, but between the people that they had support from. So you might have Athens supporters up here fighting against the supporters of Sparta up there.
415 BC, the Athenians devised a plan they believed would bestow upon themselves an overwhelming advantage: the conquest of the fabulously wealthy city-state of Syracuse on the island of Sicily, who along with Athens and Carthage controlled the lion's share of Mediterranean trade. Led by the young charismatic Athenian statesman Alcibiades, the expedition ended in disaster, with Athens losing over 10,000 hoplites and 2/3 of her navy. Ships could be rebuilt, but the 30,000 professional oarsmen could not be replaced. This was followed by further disasters. Sparta freed 20,000 Athenian slaves in the city's silver mines. Athens then raised the tribute from her vassals, which caused widespread revolt in Ionia.
So what that's saying, it's saying when Athens raises the levels of tribute, it's talking about taxes on their vassals, and vassals is a word we're going to be looking at when we learn about the Middle Ages. Vassals, these are these other states that are not so powerful, they're allies, and places that they've taken over. And when they raise taxes on them, they become angry, and they are going to also not be so supportive of Athens,
for which this final stage of the war is named. The Athenian general Alcibiades, fearing retribution for his failure, switched sides and fought for Sparta, who began to receive vast sums of money from the Persian Empire, who viewed the Athenian Empire as a greater threat. With this, Sparta built up its fleet and combined with its Corinthian allies.
Wow, what a double cross, eh? So now Sparta is also receiving support from the Persian Empire. The empire that was trying to take over Greece earlier is now supporting Sparta against Athens. That's quite a stab in the back for Athens. Let's see what goes on.
Decisively defeated the Athenian navy at Aegospotami. Athens, now effectively without a navy, was besieged by Sparta and promptly surrendered. Spartan hegemony over the Greek world would be short-lived. Its most precious resource, Spartan warriors, had become far too low to maintain an empire. And after a series of smaller wars, in the aftermath of the Peloponnesian War, Philip of Macedon, the father of Alexander the Great, was able to conquer the decimated Greek city-states.
So what we see, let's stop that. What we find that with Athens defeated, and these city-states down here also weakened from these wars. It's cost a lot of their wealth. Destroyed, buildings are destroyed. People are worn out with war. You find that the region up here called Macedonia, northern Greece, decides it's going to invade, led by, you're going to find Alexander the Great is the son of one of the leaders of the Macedonian people, and it's Alexander the Great who's then going to take over Greece and also start to build a Greek empire, even taking over the Persian Empire, or huge parts of it over here to the east in Asia. Okay, I'm hoping, students, that this is helpful for you when you've been reading up on the the Peloponnesian War between Athens and the city-states. Today is the last day for the tutorial, and the mastery test is open. for you to complete. We are then going to be moving on to looking at an amazing civilization, the Romans, and we'll start with the Roman Republic. Okay, enjoy your day, students. Thank you for your time, and goodbye from me, and also goodbye from Pablo and Cecil. Have a great day. Thank you.